So in battle analysis, we're coming up on two battles that really aren't explained well enough in canon to be actually discussed in battle analysis videos, so I figured I'd cover them in one of these videos instead and just talk about them briefly. Today, let's talk about the Battles of Mygeeto and Felucia. I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to head down below and hit that subscribe button. So at the end of the war looming, we're coming up on the battles that are mentioned briefly or visualized briefly during that montage of Order 66, where we see clones and Jedi fighting alongside one another across the galaxy as the order to terminate the Jedi goes out. And while we do see quite a few battles during that sequence, most of them, that's really the only place we see those engagements, so covering them in something like battle analysis isn't really practical. As such, I've decided it's best to just talk about those battles briefly here, as opposed to covering them in full episodes of battle analysis. Those battles, by the way, being the Battles of Mygeeto and Felucia, both of which are seen during that montage. So let's just jump right in with the one that might have you scratching your head for a sec, the Battle of Felucia. The Battle of Felucia has actually been covered in the past in battle analysis, and that's because it was a battle that happened on and off throughout basically the entire duration of the war. The fighting on that world would happen sporadically throughout the duration of the conflict, and see both factions fighting over basically the same stretches of ground the entire time. So the battle on Felucia at the end of the war is just more of the same. Still, the minute specifics would be different, and it would be worth covering had we seen more of it, but instead all we see is a clone convoy moving through the dense jungles and coming face to face with a separatist convoy before the clone troopers are ordered to execute Jedi General Aayla Secura. This likely appears to show a Republic offensive into separatist-controlled territory, likely a sort of ramification of the galactic situation where the Separatists are being put on an increasingly defensive position, especially with the collapse of Separatist leadership, with the death of Count Dooku and now the death of General Grievous. I could see this perhaps being some of the last droids on Felucia, and this attack was meant to sort of break their back and allow Republic forces to finally claim complete control of the planet. That being said, that is mostly speculation. We know next to nothing about this battle, and ultimately we don't even really know how it panned out. However, it's a safe guess to say that it probably waged until the shutdown order was delivered to the droids across the galaxy just a few days later. Now, like Felucia, the Battle of Mygeeto had been raging for basically the entirety of the war on and off, with three distinct battles culminating in the third Battle of Mygeeto, which is what we see on screen during Revenge of the Sith. As such, I would assume that the battle that we see during Revenge of the Sith on Mygeeto is, like the battle on Felucia, a Republic offensive into some of the last Separatist forces on the planet, with Separatist forces being forced into an increasingly defensive position. In this engagement, we see Ki-Adi-Mundi leading forces of the 21st Nova Corps against a Separatist stronghold situated among these large cities connected with bridges. The Republic force consisted of primarily infantry being supported by light transports that were bringing up the rear with some light munitions. They were coming up against a heavy Separatist position being defended by a number of tri-droids, which were very, very capable military machines released by the Separatists at the very later end of the war. Like the battle on Felucia, this battle is interrupted when Ki-Adi-Mundi's clone troopers, the forces of the 21st Nova Corps, are given the order from Palpatine to turn on the Jedi, an order which they follow to the letter, turning on Ki-Adi-Mundi and executing him during the engagement. There's another battle shown during this sequence. We briefly see some clone troopers scouting on Salucami when they're given the order to execute their Jedi commander, but we know even less about that battle than we do about the other two. We do know that earlier in the war there was a battle on Salucami when Grievous's flagship was destroyed over the planet and a hunt for the droid general was carried out on the surface of the world. This is in the very early days of the war. But the context of this engagement later on we know next to nothing about, so I really can't say much about it. All in all, these battles represent the tiny battles that are just basically, visual representations of the Clone Wars for that montage that occurs during Revenge of the Sith. There are still a few battles that will be covered in battle analysis, and we'll get to one of those coming up next week, but I wanted to dive into these battles now because these are battles that I probably won't be able to cover in battle analysis, and I wanted to give them at least a little bit of a mention on this channel as we get to that part of the war. It's also worth noting that thanks to the final arc of the Clone Wars, we know that both of these battles started before the Separatist assault on Coruscant, so at this point in the war they would in fact be going on. If you'd like to learn more about the Separatist assault on Coruscant, which sort of facilitated the final days of the war, I'll leave a link up here to my video on the Battle of Coruscant and how that engagement played out. And I'd like you to let me know down in the comments whether you think the Separatist forces on Mygeeto and Felucia held out until the droid shutdown order, or do you think they were actually defeated before then by advancing Republic troops? Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.